So talk about another burning light bulb issue that creates huge anxiety in Nigeria, and it's got to be electricity, or the lack of it. For tens of millions of Nigerians, as the sun sets every day, nighttime means darkness. Electricity has become the most elusive promise made by politician after politician for decades. Day after day, there is often no electricity in homes as well as in hospitals, schools and offices. So many companies, both private and public, have tried to be part of the solution, the conduit that would take power to the people. But like most businesses in Nigeria, even they also use expensive diesel and generators more than half the time, with power generation wiping off a lot of their profit. On his way to winning the election in 2023, President Tinubu made fixing the country's electricity crisis one of his top priorities. So after 2 years of trial and error, what has happened since? Well, for more on this, I'm joined now in the studio by the chairman of the Senate Committee on Power, Senator Enyinnaya Abaribe, who's a member of one of the opposition parties in the National Assembly, the All Progressives Grand Alliance, or APGA. Thank you very much indeed for coming in.
It's my pleasure, Charles.
Before we get into the electricity thing, great to see you, by the way. I mean, you had a close shave yesterday in your Air Peace flight into Abuja from Owerri. It's not actually funny. I understand it was a bird strike. I mean, it sounds scary. Tell us more about that and how much you were shaken by that experience.
Actually, there was a bird strike, but let me say that the pilots were very professional, and not many people knew that there was a problem. You know, usually bird strikes happen through the engine nacelles, but this was a bird strike on the windscreen of the plane. And I think the pilot tried to go, and then it was blossoming.
Right.
So, I mean, there was this fear that there might be an explosive decompression, usually if the windscreen fails. So the
windscreen was cracking,
It was cracking, and then you could see the lines going. Well, of course, we didn't know.
Right.
Because, I mean, the pilot's area was closed off, but the pilot, of course, we noticed, you know, midway that he had to come down.
Right.
And then turn.
Was it a dramatic drop?
No, it wasn't a dramatic drop. It was gradual.
Right, okay.
You know, and then some of us who had been flying that route were wondering, why did he need to? I actually thought it was because of, you know, storm clouds or something.
Right.
But then they later announced that they had an issue and had to come back to Owerri. In fact, some passengers never knew that we didn't land in Abuja.
Right.
Because they had slept off or something. But the pilots were so good, very nice, you know. And they landed smoothly. It was when they now opened the cockpit door after we had landed and we were trying to come out that we now saw all the cracks. I mean, it was...
That's serious.
No, we didn't know. That's the point.
Right.
Because they were really very professional, you know. And... well, later they found another flight, which came about 5 hours later. But the point really is this. I had read some statement by Air Peace the previous week where they were complaining that they were having frequent issues of bird strike. They had in Enugu, they had in Port Harcourt, and this time now in Owerri. Maybe because of the frequency of their flights.
Right.
And that nothing was being done. So maybe I'll use this opportunity to ask the authorities, you know, Federal Airport Authority, because it's their responsibility. There's an equipment which you use to scare away birds and all that from around the vicinity of an airport. Instead of our waiting.
It's like a sonar thing that sends beeping noises.
Yeah, there's some beeps, and there's even one that's like a cannon shot.
Right.
You know, I mean, they use it. You know, what goes on here is still the same problem of Nigeria.
Right.
We just wait until there's a big problem. And then if there was a crash yesterday, well, we thank God it didn't happen, then there will have been an inquest and somebody will say, somebody didn't do his job.
Yes.
Of course. What now is the issue is this, which is what we're also going to talk about in the sense of this power issue. no consequences for bad behavior. So, as at this moment, there must be some people in FAN that ought to be sanctioned for not doing their job.
Because, I mean, as you said, there seem to be more incidents like this taking place. You mentioned a number of the bird strikes. There was also talk about a collision with an antelope.
Precisely.
Recently,
I think
FPs
had a collision with an antelope in Asaba Airport the other day.
Right.
I mean,
Was
think about it.
Asaba or Port Harcourt or
It
something?
was in Asaba.
Okay, right.
And they said some hunters were pursuing an antelope and it ran
It
across.
sounds bizarre, doesn't
Which
it?
means that there was no perimeter fencing.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, because if there was a perimeter fence, an antelope would not be able to, except it jumps.
Yeah,
Without
over
doubt.
the fence.
Without doubt, yes. So, the roads are bad.
Right.
There are difficulties everywhere. Now you want to fly and then people are not up to their jobs. I mean, it's not...
Yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out, because it's important, especially when people like you have that kind of experience. At least you're one of the top echelons of government in this country.
Festus Keyamo is my friend. I think I'll probably call him and ask him, will you prefer that I was dead? Before you take action.
But Festus will probably take action. I mean,
he must take action.
He seems to be that kind of person.
I'm sure he's a hands-on guy, so he should take action on this.
Well, let's turn to the substance of this interview, which is Nigeria's never-ending electricity crunch. You're the chairman of the Senate Committee on Power. What are the problems and how do we tackle it? As briefly as you can, but let's just hit the nail on the head, because this thing has been going on for far too long.
Problem, simple, money, if you want the real answer. And I will put it this way. Every government that comes into office promises to deal with the issue.
Indeed.
But once they now see the enormity and what needs to be done, then they now step back and find it very difficult to muster. What needs to be done is that there has to be a national determination by the, I would say the president, or who is in power, party in power, government, to say, okay, we're going to deal with this issue. Because how is the power situation?
Yeah, but they all say they're going to deal with the issue.
They always say so, but will never do much. And I'll tell you why. Once they come in and they confront the fact that there's so much money problem in terms of funding. For example, today, as at now that we're talking, the Nigerian government is owing close to 4 trillion naira to both the distribution companies,
the discos,
and then the look at the humongous amount, 4 trillion. So every government that comes and looks at it, they'll look away and try to look for some other issues. Now, we also need to deconstruct the industry to know exactly where we are. As at today, the generating side is fully private. It's in the hands of the private sector. The government side of it are just a holding company, the Niger Delta company running the plants. The distribution side are fully private. 11 distribution companies and a few more. Now,
so it's transmission.
So the transmission is what is in the hands of government.
Right.
Now, you now see the embedded power that they have, that they can generate today from the generation part, is about 13 megawatts.
13,000
13,000 megawatts.
Right.
Now, the transmission side can move, which is what they call wheeling.
Yeah.
Move it from generation to distribution. It's not up to maybe 6,000 to 7,000. So there's already a disconnect.
Right. So it's the capacity of the transmission.
It's a disconnect.
Right.
Then for the distributors, they are also having the issue that not up to 5,000 megawatt can be distributed. So you can see this disconnect between both distribution,
right,
transmission.
But whose responsibility is it, given that the discos are in private hands, to expand their distribution capacity?
The responsibility to distribute is in the hands of the distribution companies.
So is it because they're owed money that they will not expand their distribution capacity?
I think that there was a time we were discussing it, I think with the late, the former minister, Fashola, and what I told him was, from one of the verses in the Bible, all have sinned and come short of the glory. Almost everyone in their own part has fallen short of the agreements that were reached. Government on its own was unable to keep its own part. Of course, the distribution companies are also unable. And of course, the distribution company will tell you that it is because government is not doing its own part, but the distribution companies, 40% of their equity is held by the federal government. Now, the federal government has said, oh, we can even give it away if it's going to improve. Yeah, but then the processes to get to that point is where it becomes very, very tough and very, very, tangled legally and operationally.
I have to say that talking with you has further depressed me, to be honest, because I thought you were going to come in and say it's all, because I mean, that's what we keep hearing from the Tinubu administration officials, that power is being dealt with and that it's going to be a matter of, very soon. In fact, there's talk about billions of dollars that's been amassed or is being assembled that is going to make this thing, I mean, they're talking about thousands of megawatts that are going to be coming in within the next few years.
Okay, let me tell you where the government is coming in and the interventions they are trying to do.
And your assessment of those
interventions. The intervention,
because you oversight them.
The intervention is to intervene with respect to the transmission lines.
Right.
So part of that agreement with Siemens, if you heard about the Siemens deal and everything, was part of improving the transmission. So the essential thing is that if you improve the transmission, then as generation is going up and they can wheel more, then it will go all the way down. But you see, because this is a chain that goes from one point to the other, you can't move one up without doing the other one. So as much as they want to move the transmission, they will also need to, at the same time, help the distribution companies or require the distribution companies to also up their game.
Right.
So what we are seeing today actually is all talk and very little action. And I don't blame them.
And you're not saying that as an opposition person. I mean,
no,
I
don't say things regarding power as opposition. I'm for the people of Nigeria.
Yeah, because I mean, what I've heard is a little bit contrary to what you're saying, but I would obviously give particular credence to your assessment because you're the chairman of the Senate Committee on Power, and you're oversighting that.
I didn't say that government is not trying, but I'm just saying that this requires far more than government is willing to deal with. And I just say it very simple now. What does the government feel about the cost of electricity? Now, what is the cost of electricity? Is the generation cost plus the transmission cost to the distribution cost, and then that gives you a figure. Now, out of that figure, government says to the distributors, okay, you distribute to this extent, we will take care of the balance. And nobody takes care of that balance. That balance continues to grow every day.
Right.
And that's how it has gotten up to the 4 trillion. So, of course, it's obvious to all of us now that where would the government get 4 trillion? Now, if you're a distributor, for example, and as a disco, you have access to go and borrow. What anybody is going to look at you is to look at your spreadsheets and look at your financials and say, even if I give you money today, how am I going to get it back?
Yeah.
Simple. Then you go down to the generating company. Generating companies are generating. They're not getting paid. Well, they're getting paid, but not to the extent of what they generate. Why? Because I think about 80% of what we generate comes from thermal plants. Now, the thermal plants, that is gas, you have to pay a gas supplier. So if the gas supplier, you're unable to pay him, what do you think he will do?
Supply you
He will supply you with gas. Then you will have to cut off. And don't forget, these plants are built to run continuously. So if you shut down a plant, to start up the plant again, you're talking millions of dollars. So everyone is in a catch-22 situation.
Absolutely.
It makes more sense to say the truth so that we all know how we are going to deal with it.
I think I'm very appreciative of you of making these points very, very clear. But what I need to ask you now then is, what is the plan going forward? I mean, you've enumerated the problems, and we appreciate the fact that you've done so very articulately and without complication, so everybody understands where things are. What's the plan going forward?
The plan going forward, number one, is this. Deal with the matter of collections from the private people. And the best way to do it is to make sure that everybody is metered. So the federal government has a plan.
Right.
And there's a special advisor to the president that they are going to meter everyone. So if you meter everybody, then people will start using and paying according to, and not according to what somebody will call just giving you a bill, which is causing so much rift between the consumers and the distribution companies. Secondly, deal with the issue of the transmission, and that is where the federal government, what the FGN power is now trying to do, with the transmission company of Nigeria, which is government owned. So you pour more resources there, make sure that you can improve the transmission. Because I tell you, today, because of the way the transmission lines are, if there's a break anywhere, it affects the whole of the line.
Right.
Whereas if it was in a concentric way, maybe if there's a break somewhere around Lagos, it shouldn't affect somebody here. But then, because there's just one network, which is controlled from Oshobo, once there's a break somewhere, it affects all the rest of the country. And right now, going to the power lines that go to the north, one side has been off for a very long, for some time now. The western side is the eastern one that they're using now. If any break happens in the eastern, you have no power in the north. So you ask yourself, how do we deal with this? And so that is where we come back to the age-old question: money, money, money.
Right. And are they making moves to raise that money?
Well, we have made our own submissions.
Right.
I have been working with the minister on making sure that we can get to the government to say, devote a chunk of your resources to this area. Why? Because look at every economy in the world. Your development is pari passu with the production of electricity. So if your electricity is low, you know that development is going to definitely be low.
You can't be
and
talking
of course
about
it affects everyone.
everything.
I mean, it affects everybody.
You can't be talking about economic development without electricity.
Precisely. So I mean, we have, as of today, 5,000 megawatts for a country of this nature. Just a bloody joke.
Yeah.
So you can now see why we need to, instead of saying, oh, let's wake up and throw money at giving people handouts and all. I mean, put it in these places that will do the generation and multiplier effect that will expand our
Right.
economy.
What about the government, the plan, and I think it was the National Assembly that broke up this kind of thing where the electricity production is centralized. In other words, states can start generating their own. I mean, is that going to
Yes,
make?
yes. No,
is
no.
that potentially
The
making
law,
any difference?
the law was amended in 2023, giving states and other entities the right to be able to now generate, distribute, and also supervise their own
And
within their own
bypassing
areas. But you see the real
the
problem.
national thing.
The real problem is this: because we are so tightly knit as a country, it's very difficult for a state to now say we'll just do for our own state alone. So there has to be cross-border,
Right.
well, also for economies of scale. You follow me? So we are also in the process of amending the law slightly to make sure that people can come together, a cluster of states can come together and now say, let us do one thing that serves everyone
Right.
much more,
Right.
much better. And then, of course, there are conflicts that will come out. For example, if we take the issue of electrical standards, if you have a plug, there's a standard, there's a specification for it, and you ask yourself, suppose a state decides that they're going to use a lower specification, what do? You understand? And it's not in the law. So we now want to be able to
Standardize it.
standardize all
Right.
those and make sure that people don't go outside of any.
Right.
We
Okay.
already have our standards that are already set.
Okay. We're almost out of time. It's been really illuminating talking about this, but I can't have you here without mentioning politics because, or should I say politricks?
Well,
as
I
somebody
came,
would say.
here for
Well, I know
power.
you came for power, but I wonder how the landscape is looking from your perspective, the political landscape, as a member of the opposition APGA party.
Yes.
The political landscape in Nigeria.
Well, all we're seeing now are people who are a little scared, are running helter-skelter. And we don't think that that should be the case. I don't think so. I'm part of...
You mean the people who are defecting when you say running helter-skelter?
Well, the people who are defecting, what are you going there to do? I think my very good friend Ndume said it the other day. You can have as many people as possible. That does not change what is on the ground. I represent a senatorial zone. I have the city of Aba. Am I going to go to the Aba people and tell them, oh, we are defecting to APC? They will ask me one simple question because Aba people have this way of coming back at you. They say, okay, we are Igbos. Ndi Igbo Keterole. What have the Igbos gained from this government that will make us to move? And I posed the question to a good friend of mine who said, oh, we are waiting for you, all of it. And I asked him, so what have we gained? And he said, no, we have gained something. I said, what? He said, oh, Southeast Development Commission. I said, Southeast Development Commission, but every other place, South has a development commission, Southwest has, North Central has, Northeast has, not. So, what is new if everybody has the same thing you're getting? So, give me another story. And of course, they cannot. Because one simple fact that everybody from the Southeast has imbued in him now is that the government of President Tinubu has embarked on, I will call it, competitive nepotism, competing with Buhari, who we complained about that he was too nepotistic. And you now come in and you're doubling down on the nepotism, and then you want to tell me from the Southeast, with only 5 ministers for our 5 states, and Ogun State alone has 4 ministers, and you're telling me I should follow. To do and do what? What will I tell my people that I've brought home? Because you're going to go bring home the bacon. And so when people now are doing that, well, some of us will stay back and we watch them and say to them, good luck, but not in our place.
On that note, I want to thank you very much indeed. I mean, first of all, you depressed me with electricity.
No, I didn't depress you. I just gave you the facts.
Now you further, depressed me.
I gave you the facts.
No, but
Nigeria needs to know.
I do agree that you're very factual.
And all those people in the industry, from the minister all the way down to the smallest person who is in the industry, all of us understand this, and we're all working hard to make sure that we deal with this issue.
Well, I suppose that's why the people voted you in and have been voting you in ever since. I want to thank you very much indeed. It's great to have you here. Senator Enyinnaya Abaribe is a member of the All Progressives Grand Alliance, or APGA. He's also the chairman of the Senate Committee on Power. Thank you very much indeed.